Wes, we have a few more members joining us. I'll leave it to your discretion when you want to officially start the meeting, or if you want me to continue doing a couple of sound checks while we're waiting.
Let's use this next minute for sound checks, and then we'll get started.
Perfect. Okay, Sarah Fangman. Hello, Superintendent.
Good morning.
Good morning, thank you. And Caitlin Armstrong from Palm Beach. We're waiting for Caitlin. Cassandra from the Water Management District, if you could just do a sound check. She's on. Cassandra, I've got your video, but I'm not hearing. You have sound challenges. I see you nodding your head. Okay. All right. We'll see if we can help you out some way with that. And Caitlin, I see you as well. Are you able to do a sound check? Oh, we're working on those two. Hi, Ian. Welcome. Could you please do a brief sound check for us?
Absolutely. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining.
My pleasure.
Hi, Laura. While we're waiting to get started, could you please do a brief sound check with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Morning.
Thank you for joining. Hi, Eric. I see you've got your mic ready to do a sound check for me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I was just going to hop in and say good morning and happy Valentine's Day to everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you so much. If I've missed anyone who would like, of our members who would like to do a brief sound check, please go ahead and say hello.
Hi, this is Cassandra. Can you hear me now?
Yes, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Great.
This is Caitlin in Palm Beach. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. And Laura, just so you know, I think the cover on your video camera might have been on when you turned on your video. We just got a black screen.
Yeah. Thank you.
No worries. All right, Alan, I think that's pretty much everybody.
Yep.
We're ready to go. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the kickoff meeting of the Florida's Coral Reef Coordination Team. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thanks, everybody, for attending, both the participants as well as anybody listening online. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and being webcast live. A link to the live webcast on YouTube is available at the bottom of the www.EvergladesRestoration.gov homepage. And also, I'd just like to remind everybody listening at home that there is an opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting, and we look forward to that. My name is Wes Brooks. I am the chair of the team, and I'm going to turn it over now to Executive Director of the Office of Everglades Restoration Initiatives, Adam Gelber.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Wes. I'd like to also welcome everybody here and thank all the agencies for dedicating the time and consideration for appointing members, involvement, and there's been a lot of back and forth to work towards this first meeting. We really look forward to kicking this off and supporting this process. It goes back probably a year or two to develop this charter and to work towards a mutually shared objective of looking at how reefs are important to Everglades restoration and an integral part as stated in the mission. Also like to thank the public as well for showing up today and participating and remaining engaged in again, this very important mission. The meeting is intended to kick off, as you know, the first new Florida Coral Reef Coordination Team that was recently approved by the working group. The team was approved by the working group in September of 22. Wes, as you know, is the chair was confirmed as the chair at the January 24th working group meeting. The team will serve as an advisory role to the working group and science coordination group, and not as a direct granting or operation agency. Wes, along with Alan Childress and the other OERI team here that's supporting this meeting, will help facilitate this forward progress. Thanks again for everybody attending this meeting, and look forward to a robust year ahead. Thank you. Back to you, Wes.
Thank you so much, Adam. And thank you for the tremendous support that you've provided in getting this team up, as well as your team, just to be able to set up this this virtual environment for our first meeting. At this point, I'd like to recognize Alan Childress, who is our lead staffer supporting all the work of this team. And she's going to go over some administrative announcements related to the Zoom platform.
Perfect. Thank you, Wes. Good morning, everyone, and thank you again for joining us. Members of the public, thank you for joining. If you have not provided your name and affiliation, we will be removing you by the administrator for security purposes. Please note that all attendees are automatically muted and are in listen-only mode. Please refrain from raising your hand until the public comment period has been announced. Raised hands before the public comment period will be lowered by the administrator. Once the public comment period begins, please use the raise your hand feature located at the bottom of your Zoom window, and we will call on you and unmute your microphone one at a time. When you have been called on to speak, please ensure that all other devices are muted to avoid any background noises and interruptions. If any attendee experiences any Zoom technical issues during the meeting, you can access the webcast as previously mentioned on our website, EvergladesRestoration.gov. Thank you very much. And Wes, that's all for the administrative items on Zoom.
Great. Before we kick it off, I'd like to recognize a couple of dignitaries that we have with us today. First and foremost is our Vice Chair of the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Task Force, Secretary Sean Hamilton from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. We also have some working group members in attendance as well. I think Ed Smith, also from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, is joining us today, along with Veronica Harold James from the Department of Justice, and Adam Brame, from NIPS at NOAA. I'd like to offer at this time, if any of you or any other working group or science coordination group members are on the line and would like to make some initial comment, Alan, we can certainly allow that at this time.
Yes. So I don't see any hands up from any of our working group or science coordination group members. We do have a hand up from Commissioner Doug Smith, if you'd like to.
That would be great. I was just about to mention that Martin County Commissioner Doug Smith was on the line. Commissioner Smith, by all means, floor is yours.
Hi, Kevin. Were you able to unmute his microphone?
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you all very much, Wes. Thanks for having the meeting and putting this all together for the rest of the staff. We really appreciate it very much and look forward to the rest of the discussion. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here, and thank you for all of your support for reef issues, especially at the northern end of the system where you all reside. Okay, and Alan, we don't have any comments then from any other dignitaries?
Not at this point. We will have another opportunity for them to speak prior to the public comment section later on in the agenda.
Excellent. All right. Well, at this point in time, I think we'll move along to member self-introductions. I'm going to ask everybody to remember to identify yourself, speak clearly into your microphones when called on to speak. I'm going to go through the roster and I'm going to ask all members to also provide a brief overview of their agency's role with respect to coral reefs, whether that's your agency's jurisdiction, their authorities, responsibilities, etc. And we're going to try to keep this meeting moving. So try to stay at the 50,000 foot level as best as possible, and keep everything to about 5 minutes each. And I will come back around at the end and bat cleanup. So if we could start out with Chris Eggleston from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Yeah, hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Eggleston. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm the manager of the Florida Keys Refuge Complex. And so here at the refuge complex, I'm in charge of 4 national wildlife refuges, all located within the Florida Keys, including the Crocodile Lake, National Key Deer, Great White Heron, and Key West refuges. And so we mostly manage coral reef associated resources, with our primary charge being to manage terrestrial resources. So we manage a lot of the islands in the backcountry. Many of the smaller ones, which are made up of mangroves, are valuable for seabird nesting and loafing, while a lot of the larger ones in the back are a little bit more substantial, made up of karst and sand, a variety of vegetation, including mangroves, and those are again valuable for seabird nesting, loafing, feeding, as well as providing nesting habitats for turtles, among other things. We also have a fair bit of refuge lands on the main keys here, including Big Pine, the Torches, Summerlin, Cudjoe, and Sugarloaf keys. And then as far as the water resources go, we co-manage a lot of the waters with the state and NOAA. All of the waters within our refuge boundaries. And then I guess a little bit about our refuges. The Key West Refuge, which was established in 1908, has a total of 208,000 acres, 2,000 of which are land and 200,000 of which are water. And then we've got the Great White Heron National Wildlife Refuge, which was established in 1938. And for that one, we have about 117,000 acres in total, and only about 6,000 acres of that is land, while 110,000 of that is water. And then the National Key Deer Refuge was established in 1957, and that has about 85,000 acres total, and about 9,000 acres of that is land, while 76,000 acres of that is water. And then our newest refuge is Crocodile Lake, which was established in 1980. And for that one, we've got about 6,700 acres of land, or total. And then we have got about 6,000 acres of land and only about 700 acres of water for that one. And then collectively, we manage all 4 of them. So we have about 417,000 acres in total. Only 23,000 of that is land, because all of our islands are fairly small. And then we have 393,000 acres of water, all within the refuge boundaries. And then, on these refuges, we host about 28 threatened and endangered species. And so we're trying to keep those in mind with all the management that we're doing out here.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you for joining the team. I'm going to next turn it over to Sarah Fangman, Superintendent for the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary.
Thank you, Wes. Hoping you can hear me. You'll let me know if you can't. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. I'm looking forward to this group and hoping we can do good things together. I am, as was mentioned, Sarah Fangman, Superintendent, Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. That's part of NOAA. I'm down here in Key West. I have been in this role since about September of 2017. been with the sanctuary system for quite some time, working in other sanctuaries around the country. The Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, and our role in all of this is we co-manage the sanctuary with the state of Florida. The area includes, waters just off of Miami, 3,800 square miles in total, starting off of Biscayne National Park, all the way around the Keys, out and around Dry Tortugas National Park. So a pretty large area. The shoreward boundary of the sanctuary is mean high water. So essentially, when you step in the water in the Florida Keys, you're in the sanctuary. And of course, within that area, we have a lot of different habitats we protect, a lot of mangrove, seagrass habitats, of course, our coral reefs. The statistic we use is 6,000 species within the sanctuary. I'm not sure who counted, but that's what we say. So it's a very rich ecosystem, and our role is to try to manage all of the uses. Over 5 million people come and enjoy these waters every year, doing all kinds of activities. And so our effort is to try to allow and enjoy these, allow people to enjoy these resources, but do so in a way that is sustainable. So I think I'll leave it with that. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And a little jealous that you're in Key West. I think you're probably in the best spot of everybody in the Zoom room today. I'm going to turn it over next to Wade Lehman with the Oceans and Estuarine Management section at US EPA.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you. So as mentioned, I'm with EPA. I'm in a regional office, which is the entire Southeast, stationed in Atlanta. As to relevant programs, there's a few different things we touch on, and I've worked with quite a few of you before, and it's good to see you all. So first of all, we chair, along with FDEP, the Water Quality Protection Program in the Florida Keys, working alongside the FKNMS as well. We also put out an RFA annually, a grant for looking for grant proposals, in which we fund generally between $1.5 and $2 million worth of coral work every year. We also fund a monitoring program with DEP to actually do assessments in the coral along Florida's coral reef. I think this year we received about $1.5 million in funded proposals related directly to coral work, but almost everything we do also touches on water quality, so indirectly affecting the coral reefs as well. In addition to that, we also have our port dredging project, if you will, our ocean disposal program, in which we monitor and make sure any sediments that are being taken offshore are safe for the environment. And so we get engaged with Florida a lot and with the Corps of Engineers a lot in making sure that sediments are safe for disposal offshore. And those are the biggest programs, but additionally, we also manage the National Estuary Program, many of which you're familiar with. We have the Indian River Lagoon Program, which is about half, maybe not quite half, touches on the coral reef, but obviously is a source related to it. And we have Coastal Heartland on the southwest side as well. So a lot of smaller programs with a lot of different focus areas, but most of which touch on water quality and indirectly on coral reefs. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for joining us, Wade. Next, we're going to go to Gil McCrae, Director of the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission's Fish and Wildlife Research Institute. Gil?
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Gil McCrae. I'm with FWC. I'm the director of our Fish and Wildlife Research Institute, which is the research division within FWC. And we have a long history with coral reef monitoring in Florida. Our monitoring program goes back over 30 years. It's one of the longest running monitoring data sets in the world for coral reefs. So we have an active program that has documented a fundamental shift in the coral reef community that in part is responsible for why this group is pulled together. And of course, FWC has a perspective that is very broad. We also have a long-running seagrass monitoring program in Florida Bay, and very concerned about the conditions in Florida Bay, and as well as the impacts of water releases on the estuaries on our east and west coast. So our perspective with FWC is broad. So we're very pleased to see this new group come into effect to work with the task force on a broad South Florida ecosystem approach to some of the challenging issues that we have. And you'll hear from CJ Sweetman in a bit. He's from our Division of Marine Fisheries Management. Of course, they come at this from a fisheries centric role, but we all know that the fish and wildlife communities are emergent properties of water quality and habitat quantity and quality. So very excited to see this group get rolling and happy to contribute wherever we can.
Thank you so much, Gil. Next, we're going to jump to Joanna Walzak with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection's Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection.
Good morning, all. I actually am a little bit of an overachiever with my co-presenter, Nikki. We actually did a presentation, so if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to share our screen really quickly. And I promise, oh, actually, is that okay, Alan? I'm sorry, I realized that I have to ask you to stop sharing yours.
Let me see, because that might cause an issue real quick.
You know what?
Fine. Never. There we go. I think.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm happy to wing it as well. Whatever works best. So good morning, everyone. Joanna Walzak, as Wes mentioned, I'm with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And let's see, hopefully you can see my shared screen at this point.
Yes, we can. If you could put it into, there we go. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm co-presenting today with Nikki Morgan. I work within the Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection as the administrator for the Coral Protection and Restoration Program. And Nikki is an environmental consultant in our Division of Ecosystem Assessment and Restoration. And we, on behalf of the department, wanted to give you a quick overview of all of the many ways the department is involved in protecting Florida's coral reef. So our main mission is as the state's lead agency for protecting, serving, and managing our state's natural resources, air, land, and water, and enforcing our environmental laws. Specifically, our big vision is to be a world leader in protecting our natural resources while also ensuring that we're growing the state's economy. And because, as we all know, Florida's coral reef is so ecologically and economically important, that's why the work of this body is so critical and why we're so excited to be a part of it. So we are divided into three primary areas. We have our, excuse me, our regulatory programs, land and recreation, and ecosystem restoration divisions, all of which have critical roles in pieces of managing the health of the environment here in Florida. But I'm just highlighting just a few here, just to kind of hone in on things that tangibly touch Florida's coral reef. Specifically, the permitting of impacts to Florida's coral reef are done through our Southeast District and through our Beaches, Inlets, and Ports program. Both are responsible for ensuring the appropriate permitting and mitigation for any impacts to the reef. Management, in terms of place-based management, we have multiple programs that kind of touch on it in different ways. We have our award-winning Recreation and Parks Division, specifically our long-standing history of coral reef management spanning back into the 60s with the establishment of John Pennycamp Coral Reef State Park as the first underwater park in the nation, as well as our Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection and all of the various programs, including my own, in that division. The way we do place-based management is a little bit different between the state parks, who are very focused on the award-winning, I have to say, because I know the secretary is on and I want to make sure that I emphasize how important the stakeholder engagement is, and making sure that we are providing opportunities for people to recreate on these important resources. But we also, in the Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection, want to make sure that we are protecting the ecosystem as well, and making sure that those ecosystems stay happy and healthy. And we do that through various programs, including our aquatic preserves, the Coral Reef Conservation Program, and, as Sarah mentioned, the co-management of the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. Excuse me. Each of these programs in the Southeast region of the Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection is responsible for the various monitoring, management, research, stakeholder engagement, et cetera, that goes on in each of these locations. It's so hard to sum up in just a 50,000-foot level everything that these programs do, but they are absolutely essential to bringing the communities together, both across the agencies and the actual stakeholders, the fishing, diving communities, basically anyone who has a stake in protecting Florida's coral reef. These programs are the ones that are out there doing the important work of getting those folks together and making sure that they have a voice in management of Florida's coral reef. My program, the Coral Protection and Restoration Program, is a little bit newer on in the department. We were established a couple of years ago to align some of the higher level funding that was coming in, thanks to the legislature and governor's support, and making sure that we are getting the right money to the right people, doing the right things to protect and restore Florida's coral reef. Our program also provides leadership for the ongoing response to stony coral tissue loss disease. We also are leading a lot of the restoration planning for Florida's coral reef, and our big focus is enhancing regional water quality. But overall, we represent all of us collectively as the state of Florida at the national platform, including the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force. I just wanted to highlight some of the funding opportunities that we have as part of my program and what they kind of go to as it relates to the work we're doing here. Right now, we administer an annual $20 million grant that is going to direct nutrient reduction projects within Biscayne Bay, so that we're getting to the source of these pollution issues and continually chipping away at increasing the health of the bay, which ultimately benefits the offshore reef. We also have approximately $8 million that annually comes in through our Resilient Coastlines funding that supports the ongoing research and response to stony coral tissue loss disease, including restoration, propagation, and, as I mentioned before, additional water quality enhancements. The new thing I really wanted to highlight for you all is something that we don't have a ton of information quite yet on, but we're very excited about, which is the new governor's announcement. For those of you who just saw his executive order come out and the announcement that there's going to be a new Florida's Coral Reef Restoration and Recovery Initiative with an approximately $10 million budget for infrastructure to support reef restoration. Our program will be directly responsible for implementing this new and exciting opportunity, and I will be sure to share more as we progress. I'm going to turn it over now to Nikki, who's going to give you a quick overview of what she does in DEER.
Yeah, so I am in the Division of Environmental Assessment and Restoration, also known as DEER, for those of us who love our acronyms. And I am within the Water Quality Restoration Program. Several programs are involved in DEER's adaptive management strategy for assessment and restoration. And so that includes our water quality standards, water quality assessment that do the biennial assessments, water quality monitoring, which includes a lot of our regional operating centers that are very important for being able to get to all these locations within Florida. Our laboratory does all of our water quality testing, as well as biological testing and bacteria testing. Quality evaluation and TMDL programs sets those goals for any impaired water bodies. Our watershed services program is part of our GIS and technology services, and then water quality restoration, which works towards implementing some of these programs. Next slide. So again, DEER has this set of goals that we have to go through to go set the standards, determine impaired water bodies, develop restoration plans with locals, and then continue to work towards those. Part of that adaptive management includes using toxicological and ecological data for studying water quality standards. So for coral reefs, this includes chlorophyll A, total nitrogen, total phosphorus. We are working on a turbidity narrative nutrient criteria. And then we also set quality assurance requirements, including standard operating procedures for field sampling and procedures for laboratory analyses. So that can help with continued monitoring that is good for regulatory processes. The DEER also has an extensive sampling network for water quality monitoring to assess upstream and coastal water bodies. So we do not do any coral monitoring at this point. And if you go to the next slide, you can see these dots on this map are part of our extensive sampling that both includes sampling from our regional operations centers done by DEP or done by some of our stakeholders. So those can be sampled anywhere from every 2 weeks to every 6 months, depending on the necessary data for any of those watersheds. And all of that data is open and publicly available in the Watershed Information Network that is part of our Watershed Services Program. And then the final assessment restoration, where we have to then go forward and deal with the impaired water bodies by doing those assessments, determining the total maximum daily loads or TMDLs. We're currently piloting a bacteria TMDL, which could be very important for coral reef restoration. And then developing those regional management plans with local stakeholders to improve water quality in any watersheds. They have different levels, so we can have the basin management action plan, which is a little bit more formal and state implemented, which is called BMAPs you'll hear about pretty frequently, especially if I'm talking. And then you have the reasonable assurance plans, which are more stakeholder led. And so Miami-Dade, Biscayne Bay are in those RAP programs. And then 4E are pollution reduction plans, where they're trying to get water quality improved before a TMDL needs to be assessed. And that includes Loxahatchee watersheds and areas like that in the Everglades. And that's Steve.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Joanna and Nikki, for that. I want to acknowledge really quickly, we have a couple other working group and science coordination group members who have joined us. Karen Bonesack from NOAA, Roland Odolini from Lee County. Those are our working group members. And then science coordination group members, Joan Browder from NOAA, as well as Chad Kennedy from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. We're going to keep going through the roster here, and then I will, hopefully, if we have a little time, I'll open it up for comment from those working group and science coordination group members as well. So next up, not to be outdone by the previous presentation, Eric Stabenow, Branch Chief with the National Park Service's South Florida Natural Resources Center. Go ahead,
Hey,
Eric.
good morning. Yeah, good morning. I appreciate you trying to follow that one. While I am known to be able to talk, I'm going to keep this relatively short this morning. I am Eric Stabenow. I'm with the National Park Services at the South Florida Natural Resources Center. It's always good to refresh our memory or understanding of what that organization does. It provides the science support for Everglades restoration projects across South Florida. So we have a fairly large domain reaching up to Lake Okeechobee and beyond, out through the watershed and now beyond the coral reefs. From the coral side, as National Park Service units go, we have Biscayne National Park and Dry Tortugas National Park with responsibilities for coral in their domain, and then of course Everglades National Park with Florida Bay and responsibilities associated with what we do with the watershed and water quality, and that has a significant nexus with coral reef restoration, coral reef health. On a personal level, I've been representing the National Park Service on the executive coordination team for the stony coral tissue loss disease the last few years, and worked alongside with Gil and others on that project. So I think that's my brief introduction of where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Next up, CJ Sweetman, Federal Fisheries Section Leader for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. As Wes mentioned, my name is CJ Sweetman. I'm the Federal Fisheries Section Leader for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission's Division of Marine Fisheries Management, and I'm based out of Marathon in the Keys. FWC's Division of Marine Fisheries Management role is to provide the Commission with sound basis for the conservation and management of Florida's marine fisheries resources, and to advocate at the state and federal level for Florida's interests in the conservation of these resources and their habitats. Our division authorizes all coral restoration activities in the state of Florida, with management focused on maintaining genetic diversity and the health of wild corals. Our division also closely manages the harvest of coral reef associated species through a limited entry marine life program. The harvest of octocorals, some species of sponges, tropical ornamental fish, and invertebrate species is carefully managed through this limited entry program. But the harvest of stony corals, fire corals, sea fans, wild live rock, long-spined sea urchins, and other species are prohibited. Our division recognizes the importance of coral habitat to the productivity of our marine resources that we are charged with managing for their long-term well-being and the continued use of the people. As such, we sit on federal fishery management councils as voting members, such as the South Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Councils, as well as interstate commissions, such as the Gulf States and Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, in order to set and coordinate sustainable fishing regulations in state and federal waters of Florida. We also sit on numerous coral-focused advisory panels, working groups, and steering committees in order to remain engaged and coordinate with other management agencies and stakeholders. And DMFM also represents the FWC on the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary Advisory Council. And just to summarize, it's estimated that about 25% of all marine life species are dependent on coral reefs at some point in their life history. So simply put, healthy coral reefs are truly essential to having productive fisheries. And we very much so look forward to working with everyone on Florida's Coral Reef Coordination Team. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you so much, CJ. And I hope you're enjoying great weather in the Keys today as well. I'd also like to just recognize really quickly another working group member has stopped by, Rebecca Elliott with the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Thank you for being here, Miss Elliott. Turn it over next to Dana Wucinich Mendez, the Atlantic and Caribbean team lead for NOAA's Coral Reef Conservation Program. Dana?
Hey, thank you. And everyone else was so efficient. I guess I can talk about the NOAA Coral Program for 40 minutes now. No, just kidding, everybody. So I serve as the Atlantic and Caribbean team lead, as well as the management liaison to the state of Florida for NOAA's Coral Reef Conservation Program. I have been our programs lead on our partnerships with the state of Florida and the U.S. territories of the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, as well as our initiatives in the international Caribbean since 2002. The Coral Program was established with the passage of the Federal Coral Reef Conservation Act in the year 2000. And we work across 7 U.S. states and territories to support their coral reef conservation programs on the ground. So those are 4 jurisdictions in the Pacific, and then the 3 I mentioned on this side of the world. The Coral Reef Conservation Program has a small and mighty coordination office that falls within the National Ocean Service's Office for Coastal Management, but it's a matrix program, which means we work across NOAA, and the Coral Reef Conservation Program is governed across 4 NOAA line offices. So the National Ocean Service, the National Marine Fisheries Service, the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, OAR, and NESDIS, the National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service. We work in partnership with the very many offices and programs that fall under those 4 line offices and do coral reef research and conservation within NOAA. And we facilitate the partnerships with the states and territories and have had longstanding partnerships with their programs that have led to the establishment of formal coral reef conservation programs in the states and territories. Our program, like I said, was established by the Coral Reef Conservation Act, but our mission is to protect, conserve, and restore the nation's coral reefs by maintaining healthy ecosystem function. And we focus on 4 main pillars of work: increased resilience to climate change, reducing land-based sources of pollution, improving fishery sustainability, and restoring viable coral populations. And so we've been involved in the interagency effort to address stony coral tissue loss disease in Florida and in the U.S. Caribbean. And we've seen the power of interagency collaboration and are really happy to be a part of this group and are looking forward to seeing what that collaboration can do to address all of the other challenges facing coral reef ecosystems in Florida.
Great. Thank you so much, Dana. We're going to move on now. That was our voting membership. We're going to move on now to our non-voting membership. Cassandra Armstrong, Section Administrator with the South Florida Water Management District for Coastal Ecosystems. Cassandra?
Hi, good morning. Cassandra Armstrong. As you said, I'm with the Coastal Ecosystem section, and what that means is that my group is interested in the quantity and quality of water that is flowing into our northern and southern estuaries. So we work very hard to make sure that any of the water management activities that are occurring don't harm those environments. And provide the appropriate salinities and the appropriate nutrient loading. And we work very closely with DEP and with the Army Corps in many of our restoration projects. I'm in what's called the Applied Sciences Bureau, and what we do is monitor and assess the restoration projects that are ongoing throughout our 16 county system. And it's quite comprehensive. We've got a lot of water storage projects. We've got the EAA groundbreaking is coming on February 22nd. That will help with moving water south. We have our stormwater treatment areas that are used for increasing the water quality of the water moving south. In the northern estuaries, we've got the St. Lucie and the Caloosahatchee. 2 reservoirs are coming online shortly or being built for storing water and also increasing the water quality to them. We also monitor seagrasses, oysters, fish habitat, you name it, we do it, working very closely with DEP and the Army Corps. And so I'm looking forward to kind of expanding our area out just a little further beyond the estuaries out into the near ocean.
Thank you, Cassandra. Next, we're going to turn it over to the first of our 5 county partners, Angela Delaney, Manager for the Marine Resources Environmental Program in Broward County.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Angela Delaney again. I am the Marine Resource Program Manager for Broward County. Our section, which is housed within the Resilient Environment Department, manages the mooring buoy, artificial reef, natural reef, sea turtle, and manatee conservation programs, as well as maintain active outreach in the community. In addition to our programs, we also provide support to federal and state agency programs, which are conducted to monitor and conserve and restore the Florida's coral reef programs, specifically as it pertains to offshore Broward County. We provide staff time, expertise, field equipment, and boat support for those various programs. Overall, as part of Broward County's Code of Ordinances, as it relates to coral reefs, the Resilient Environment Department is tasked to plan, develop, and recommend policies that ensures natural resources are preserved, protected, and enhanced, in aligning with the federal, state, and regional, and our Board of County Commissioners policies and guidelines. We are responsible for the identification, monitoring, and enforcement and protection of the coastal and marine animal and plant life and environmental quality, which are necessary for the protection and preservation of the public health, safety, and general welfare. We have specific policies and objectives to meet, which is outlined in our county's comprehensive management plan. In context of Florida's coral reef, this includes sustaining or increasing function and value of wildlife and marine habitats, limiting impacts of development upon living marine resources in the beach dune system through our review of those development applications within the county, and coordinate with existing resource protection plans of other agencies through participation in the development review process. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. For Palm Beach County, I know that Caitlin Armstrong is set to be the alternate, but I see that the member, Deb Drum, is in attendance. So Deb, I'm going to turn it over to you while you're here.
Yes, thanks, Wes. Actually, I'll be here for the duration. I was afraid I was going to have to join a little later, but I'm so happy that this group has come together. I'm so happy to be part of it. I also, in addition to being having the honor of being the director of Palm Beach County's Environmental Resources Management Department, or ERM, I also occupy a local government seat on the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Working Group, which is also something that I'm very passionate about. So our department's mission is to implement environmental programs that protect, preserve, and enhance Palm Beach County's natural resources, both on land and underwater. And within our department, we have staff dedicated to land conservation and management, shoreline protection, estuarine and reef restoration, and reef management. And my alternate, Caitlin Armstrong, is online today, and she is in charge of our reef program. She works directly on 47 miles of Florida's coral reef and monitors ecosystem health and restores the reef through outplanting projects and creating artificial reefs to reduce that pressure on the natural reef system. And so we definitely see ourselves as an important part of the solution here of what we're talking about today, both on the ground and in the water, as we regionally integrate and coordinate all of our activities on this globally important coral reef system. So we're very excited to be part of it. And we also are focused on land sources of pollution to try to control those as well as they affect the reef. So that's our purpose, and we're really happy to be part of this group. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Caitlin, for both being here today. Next up, Laura Eldridge, Chief for Restoration and Enhancement section of Miami-Dade County, Durham.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting us be here today. So I'm the Restoration and Enhancement Section Manager with Miami-Dade County, Durham. And under the leadership of Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, who you guys probably know her as our water warrior. Within my section, we're the natural resource managers that are conducting restoration enhancement and also monitoring activities and projects within all county natural areas. So we manage submerged aquatic vegetation and other benthic habitats, water quality, marine debris removal management, upland management, wetlands and coastal restoration. And throughout Durham, of course, we're conducting regulatory permitting compliance, education outreach, and focusing largely on resilience to achieve long-term planning for our upland and submerged lands within Miami-Dade County. With our specific coral work, we're of course conducting coral monitoring and restoration. Just like the other counties, we deal with permitting beach renourishment and dredging projects requiring the QA/QC processes and pre and post construction surveys. We also have artificial reefs throughout our county. We conduct annual assessments of those and reports, permitting. We assist the publics with projects and project ideas, really try to achieve, the implementation from permitting all the way through deployment of artificial reefs. We also have mooring buoys. We started that largely in 2009. We've had a couple expansions. So right now we have 42 mooring buoys, of course, installed, and we maintain them in order to reduce anchoring impacts to Florida's coral reef. And we're actually excited working through the permitting process now to conduct another expansion to add 12 more mooring buoys throughout our county's waters. We largely assist with other interagency needs. So working for disease response, stony coral tissue loss disease intervention, working with NOAA on their science surveys, and CREMP. We also work heavily with the U.S. Coast Guard coordination meetings, specifically due to the port management. And then, of course, we've been largely conducting and assisting with other coral teams. So being a part of a SEFCRE as a member, with the FRIP steering committee. And of course, we were a longtime member of BBRCT, so the Biscayne Bay Regional Restoration Coordination Team. We work very strongly, of course, with marine debris removal. And so that's something that we're constantly working on inshore, but also offshore areas. And then Nikki had previously mentioned, so we are in the process of developing a reasonable assurance plan to achieve water quality restoration to benefit all of the waters within the county. So this including tributaries, Biscayne Bay and our offshore habitats. And so we're really trying to operate and adaptively manage with this like one watershed type viewpoint. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate the efforts of our counties and bringing your expertise and your care and consideration of the local resource management to this broader group. Next up, Ian Enox, who is the Coral Program Lead for NOAA's Atlantic, Oceanic, and Meteorological Laboratory. Probably not a bad spot to be today either on Virginia Key.
And yet I am tuning in from my home office today, but it is a pleasure to be with all of you here and to be able to contribute to such an important team and topic. I've had the privilege of working with many of you before on various reef-related studies. As said, I am a research ecologist at NOAA's Atlantic Oceanographic and Meteorological Laboratory. I lead the coral program there. We are a diverse group of scientists, postdocs, technicians, and students, and our work covers both laboratory and field studies, as well as modeling and monitoring. I'm the lead of the climate monitoring for the National Coral Reef Monitoring Program. And I have published extensively on Florida's coral reefs, including topics such as climate change, ocean acidification, restoration, genotype performance, and stress hardening within that restoration topic, I'm the climate lead for the Mission Iconic Reefs monitoring. We study extensively land-based sources of pollution impacts, coral disease, including ballast transmission and sediments as vectors of disease. We also are very involved with technology development, as well as paper that's about to be accepted, I think, on urban corals and reefs in the backyard of Miami in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Next up is Elizabeth Kelly, coordinator for Martin County's environmental programs. I hope we've got your technical issues solved.
Hi, Wes. I just communicated with her. She is rebooting and hoping that that resolves it. So if you could circle back to her in just a moment, we are hoping to have her be able to participate fully.
We will do that. Thank you, Alan. All right, so Chris Kellogg with USGS at the St. Pete Coastal and Marine Science Center. Take it away.
Yes, good morning. I am a senior scientist, a research microbiologist with the U.S. Geological Survey located at the St. Petersburg Coastal and Marine Science Center in St. Petersburg, Florida. And USGS approaches sort of coral reefs from at least two of our main mission areas. So the natural hazards mission area is concerned with how the corals are acting in terms of coastal protection, whereas our ecosystems mission area is more focused on the biology and ecology of the corals. For my center specifically, my research team studies coral microbiomes and microbial reef processes. So we've worked on trying to determine the causative agent of stony coral tissue loss disease and how it's being spread or transmitted through the region. We've also worked on finding the causative agent of the diadema sea urchin die-off. Other researchers within my center are studying a range of topics such as coral growth rates and what conditions sort of maximize them for success, with the idea of being able to provide our restoration partners information to optimize their choices of where they do restoration activities. We have teams that core coral reefs and look at the reef's history over geologic time to inform present day decisions. And also we have a group that's doing centimeter resolution, three-dimensional seafloor elevation maps to get a handle on seafloor erosion for a number of reasons, including being able to provide partners with information about what areas of the seafloor are the most stable over time. And we do all of these things in collaboration and partnership with pretty much all of the agencies on this call. I know I've personally worked with Florida DEP and FWC, National Park Service, and multiple programs within NOAA, including AOABL. And so I'm happy to be here as part of Team Coral. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Chris. We'll move on to Dr. Gina Ralph, lead scientist with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at the Jacksonville District. Dr. Ralph, are you able to be with us at this time?
Okay, I am here now. Can you all hear me? Sorry about the audio issues.
We can, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Gina Ralph with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Jacksonville. I am the lead scientist, and I work primarily on Everglades restoration and resiliency initiatives. At the Corps of Engineers, we are working to restore America's Everglades by working to improve the quantity, quality, timing, and distribution of freshwater flow through the Central and Southern Florida project. In addition, we, later this month, our South Atlantic Division will recognize the South Florida ecosystem as a proving ground for natural and nature-based features and engineering with nature. The Corps also, as many of you know, has other business areas in which we're working to minimize any adverse impacts on our environment, including the Florida Reef Track. We do have several programs through coastal storm risk management where we're restoring and nourishing beaches. We have deep draft navigation where we're improving navigation in our ports throughout Florida. And then we have lots of resiliency initiatives for flood risk management within our coastal communities. So I'm happy to be here today and work with you all on this exciting task team. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Gina. And while we work out the continued technical issues with Elizabeth Kelly, I also like to acknowledge that we are still working with Monroe County to get an appropriate person seated on the team to represent their interests here. I'll just go ahead and introduce myself now. And Alan, if and when Elizabeth is able to rejoin us, just flag for me and we'll get her in. I'm the Chief Resilience Officer for the state of Florida, and I head the statewide Office of Resilience inside the Executive Office of the Governor. And I feel really blessed and grateful to have been chosen to help lead this team and get this, what I think will be a really important effort off the ground. The statewide Office of Resilience is just about 8 months old, so pretty new. And our role in coral reef conservation restoration is a bit less direct than many of our other agency partners here. The major purpose of the office is to review all flood resilience and mitigation activities in the state and coordinate those efforts with federal, state, and local governmental entities and other stakeholders, including by providing strategic direction for interagency and cross-disciplinary initiatives to minimize the flood vulnerability of critical assets, as well as working to align flood resilience and mitigation priorities across governmental and non-governmental partners. Ecosystem restoration is a big part of what the state of Florida does, especially in terms of enhancing natural infrastructure to combat or mitigate flood risk. And doing so, including Everglades restoration, is a major priority, not just for the state, but for my office. In the case of coral reefs in Southeast Florida, research out of Chris's outfit there at USGS suggests that our existing reef system, which in its current state, I think we can all recognize is pretty severely degraded, provides flood protection benefits to thousands of residents and averts somewhere in the area of $675 million a year in property damages and lost economic activity. Additional research has demonstrated that additional losses in reef height, in this case, a 3-foot loss in reef height during a 100-year storm episode, right, which is a 1% average chance of occurrence each year. The number of threatened residents from flooding goes up to 24,000 from 5,600, and that economic damage figure rises to about $2.9 billion. So, you know, combating the degradation of the reef system is really critical to maintaining the value it provides from flood protection services. I'll also point out that 3-foot reef height is relative, right? So the physical and the chemical processes that may degrade, you know, the top of the reef structure and reduce its height is happening on the one end, but sea level rise on the other end also kind of increases that space between the surface level and the reef structure. So we have both of those challenges happening concurrently. And so I think with that context in mind, the population we have in Southeast Florida, the sheer economic value in the region, and it's important to the state, the demonstrated critical value of Florida's coral reef to flood risk reduction, and the promise of coral reef restoration to both counteract those physical and chemical losses, as well as allow the reef structure to keep pace with sea level rise. This represents really a major opportunity for Florida and for our state's resilience efforts. To that end, Governor DeSantis has recognized these facts and has provided the state members here on this team and on the working group and on the task force with real ammunition to make progress. In January, he issued Executive Order 2306 that in part directed myself and DEP in collaboration with FWC to develop the Florida's Coral Reef Restoration and Recovery Initiative, with the ultimate goal of restoring 25% of the reef by 2050, and to do so while undertaking targeted efforts to enhance flood protection benefits the system provides to coastal communities. Just a few weeks ago, the governor also released his fiscal year 23-24 budget recommendations that the DEP team alluded to. That includes more than $10 million in new funding for a total of more than $21 million total for coral protection and restoration initiatives to launch that FCR3 initiative, as we're calling it. And most of that initial seed money is to be used for a competitive grant program to fund the expansion of propagation infrastructure that is run by our restoration partners across the state to enhance our ability to house, breed, and reintroduce strong populations of native corals in both ecologically significant quantities and in hazard risk reducing locations. So I look forward to working with all of you and to help get this team, like I said, off the ground. One of the things I hope everybody noticed from going through the roster is there's a lot of diverse efforts going along, even sometimes within individual agencies, and there's a lot of overlapping jurisdictions. So I think the intergovernmental coordination here is going to be really important, not only to helping salvage the resource, but also for all of our efforts to work in unison. I also, do we have Elizabeth on just yet, Alan?
No, unfortunately not.
No worries, we'll keep working on it. I also just want to note at this time that we have full attendance from our voting membership. Is that correct, Alan?
Yes, 100%.
Great, so we do have a quorum at this time. We are running just a little bit ahead of time, which I hope to continue replicating throughout the year. At this point, I'm going to open it up for Alan to see if there are any task force, working group, or science coordination group members currently on the call who would like to make additional comment at this time.
Yes, if you're a task force or working group or SCG member, if you want to make any comments at this point, just raise your hand and we can unmute your microphone for you. Otherwise, if you'd like to hold some comments till later in the session, we will also open the mic up for members prior to public comment. All right, not seeing any hands right now, Wes.
Great. Well, let us bank this time and move forward. We are going to move into an overview of the South Florida Ecosystem Restoration Task Force. Obviously the overarching architecture that this team is set up under, and I'm going to turn it back over to you, Alan, to lead that for us.
Great, thank you so much, Wes. Yeah, I was so excited to hear everyone's overviews because the membership with our task force working group SCG only slightly overlaps with some of the members that we have on this team. So I'm getting to learn a lot and I'm very excited moving forward. I'm also excited because imagine, if you will, this PowerPoint, but with beautiful coral reef photos that I'm sure you all are going to share with me. So the future presentations will hopefully be a lot more beautiful. I've enjoyed looking at some of your backgrounds and things. So thank you again for joining us. I will be the staff in charge of coordinating this team along with Wes, our chair, and Adam Gelber, the director of OERI. He's also a non-voting member capacity on this team. Next slide, please, Ms. Marcia. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the task force entity, we do cover the entire South Florida ecosystem from Orlando all the way down to the Florida Keys, similar to the South Florida Water Management District government boundary. And we also have, it goes off into the offshore waters, including the coral reefs. Next slide, Marcia. The task force was established by Congress in 1996. I often discuss it as a way to make sure all those working on Everglades restoration gather around a table at least a few times a year to discuss what's happening and to work on collaborative efforts. Subsequent to the WRDA 1996, which established the task force, there have been a couple of changes in later WRDA legislation regarding invasive species. Some duties were added to our fold in WRDA 2020, and we also added an additional state task force member in WRDA 2022. Next slide. And the Office of Everglades Restoration Initiatives, also known as OERI, we do all the staff support, we conduct meetings, we write reports, we hold stakeholder engagement workshops, and we maintain the EvergladesRestoration.gov website. And the task force really works on this intergovernmental coordination piece of Everglades restoration. Just hearing all the different team members today talk about the different efforts that they have undergoing, that's the same as it is for overall Everglades restoration. So that intergovernmental coordination, also coordination of strategic science, our science coordination group, that's really their focus. We exchange information, facilitate and hopefully resolve any conflicts that arise, and are a forum for public participation and access. And if you're wondering how all that works together, the task force is the overlying body, and then that is supported by the working group and science coordination group. And then we have subgroups and teams that are created for areas or issues as necessary. And supporting all of that is stakeholder engagement. Just a quick look at who is on the task force. The task force itself is chaired by the Secretary of Interior. You see here the federal members, tribal members, and state and local members. In addition to these agencies, we have a different additional members that are on the working group and SCG. Those rosters are also available on our website if you'd be interested to see who all is participating in this intergovernmental effort. Next slide. And also of note, with all these different groups that we have, we are what is referred to as FACA exempt. The Federal Advisory Committee Act does not apply to the task force and its subgroups. That means, for instance, if you are working on a NEPA issue, a National Environmental Act, there's a lot of constraints as far as how agencies and members of the public can coordinate and work together. And we are able to have that more two-way dialogue within our groups. Next slide. And one of the main things I want to bring to your attention, if you're not familiar with the task force, is that we did establish back in the beginning in 1996, we worked on establishing 3 strategic restoration goals for the Everglades. And the next few slides are going to help walk through that, because a lot of people, sometimes they hear Everglades restoration, and those who are working hands-on often think that is just the comprehensive Everglades restoration plan, which is a huge part of it. But as you'll see in the next few slides, it's only one piece of the puzzle that the task force looks at. Next slide. So the goal 1 is getting the water right. And SERP is definitely part of that, but there are many additional programs and projects underway to restore, as Gina Ralph mentioned, the quantity, quality, timing, and distribution of water throughout the ecosystem. A lot of the state efforts for water quality, for instance, are under the getting the water right. All right, next slide. Thanks, Marcia. The next one is to restore, preserve, and protect natural habitats and species, goal 2. And this is where you'll find specific references to protection of coral reefs, in addition to conservation of uplands and other areas within Florida, and also extensive efforts by many, many agencies combating invasive exotic species. Goal 3 is fostering compatibility of the built and natural systems. That's acknowledging that we have 9 million residents here in the South Florida ecosystem, and some of the projects and programs underway there reflect water supply, flood protection, and agricultural conservation efforts as well. And that is a very brief overview. I hope that if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me, or also access our website, which has a lot more information on the task force.
Alan, Wes, if I might for a minute here. A lot of folks here on the call may not be familiar with the broad landscape level restoration effort, how we got to where we are, the IDS, the sequencing. And just real quick, we've come up with a video on the homepage. It's pretty visible down. If you want to get some background on how we got here in restoration, why the C&SF program, the video does a pretty good explanation. It's 12 minutes long. So it's a great introduction for those that are not directly involved in restoration here to integrate this group a little bit better. Thank you.
Yes, there's a link on our homepage at the top that there are several recent videos, and that one you'll find near the top for your reference. It's just helps spell out, as Adam mentioned, why the task force was needed and why the restoration effort is needed.
Great.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you both for that. And I just like to point out, obviously coral reefs are explicitly mentioned in goal 2, but as you heard Alan talk about goals 1 and 3 as well, you can certainly see very clear tie-ins to what we hope to accomplish here with the Florida's Coral Reef team. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand and we'll get you called upon in the next minute. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and move forward into just a brief discussion of the charter and what was envisioned when this team was created. Next slide. So again, the mission of this group and all of this information, again, I'll just note for everybody watching or for participants in the team itself, all this information is available on EvergladesRestoration.gov. The mission of this team is to regionally integrate and coordinate the management and restoration related activities associated with Florida's coral reef. And we're looking at that not just in the context of historic conditions, but also with respect to ongoing anthropogenic disturbance, including through implementation of South Florida ecosystem restoration, which is going to bring change, most of which we hope will be positive change for the system. The responsibilities of this team are to serve as the principal advisory body for the working group and science coordination group over any issues related to Florida's coral reef and associated resources. So again, we're looking to provide an open, inclusive forum for coordination communication, to identify and evaluate opportunities to enhance monitoring and data collection efforts across the region, as well as enhancing data accessibility for our agencies to work together and foster improved decision-making. We want to help meet our strategic goals of the task force by adopting and refining restoration goals specific to the reef system, identify and coordinate capabilities across agencies, again, to make sure that we're all working together as efficiently and effectively as possible, and also review components of the comprehensive Everglades restoration plan as they're being developed and designed so that we can hopefully secure or enhance the delivery of project benefits offshore as well. We're going to continue to coordinate as necessary with all the various other intergovernmental bodies that exist around the reef system to avoid duplication of efforts. And we'll work to inform the development of statutorily mandated task force reporting products as well. A key part of all of this under the Everglades restoration umbrella is, continuing to message the importance of restoration as a critical element to protecting, sustaining, and enhancing not just Florida's coral reef, but also the urban environments in South Florida. And then we will continue to work with Adam and Alan and the rest of the OERI team to make sure that the products that they have available for the general public on the website actually reflect the work that's happening on the ground. And then a key part for any group working in government or otherwise are deliverables. And we have two primary deliverables and sort of an open-ended charge. And so that is one, a collaborative framework for water quality monitoring along Florida's coral reef. As you all heard, many of the agencies here are doing things in the field associated with water quality monitoring. We want to make sure we understand that, again, from the 50,000 foot level, see how all the pieces come together to support a comprehensive picture of what's happening along the reef. And then we also are responsible for providing recommendations for ecological indicators and recover performance measures specific to the reef system and associated resources that can be considered for inclusion in the overall Everglades restoration monitoring by the Science Coordination Group. And we'll talk a little bit more in the future exactly about what those are, ecological indicators and recover performance measures. So don't worry if you're not quite certain yet. And then again, the working group and Science Coordination Group and Task Force recognized that some flexibility in the future may be necessary to provide other items of value and its worth as determined by this team. So the membership, we've sort of run through it, but the structure of it is there are 10 voting members, including the chair, and 10 non-voting members, including the executive director of OERI. The chair is a state member of the working group. The vice chair is a federal member of the team. And as made clear in the charter, the sub-agency representations in the charter for who should represent the specific parts of the federal and state agencies tasked with participation are optional recommendations. Just for future meetings, designees may name an alternate in the event they're unable to attend a meeting by notifying the chair and vice chair prior to or during the meeting. And it's important to note alternates are not proxies and may not vote on any matter before the group. The vice chair selection process, I think it's on the agenda for later today. The voting members of the team will nominate and recommend one of the federal members with voting responsibilities to serve as vice chair, subject to working group approval. So we'd really like to get a nomination finished before the March working group Science Coordination Group meeting so that we can get that on the agenda for approval. As far as administration, I'll zip through this pretty quickly. A majority of the voting members serving shall constitute a quorum provided that 3 federal and 3 state designees are present. As I mentioned earlier, we have full participation from our voting team, so we do have a quorum. The team is able to create its own subgroups to study by specified issues or work on tasks and report back to the team as a whole. The team shall meet at the call of the chair or that of a majority of the voting members, but not less often than quarterly. And we'll describe a bit of the schedule we have planned in the next presentation as well. And I'll open it up to any questions from the team at this time about that.
And Wes, Elizabeth has been able to join us.
Great. I'll just see if there's any hands here about questions. Okay, barring any questions, I'm going to actually turn it over to Elizabeth Kelly with Martin County. You want to introduce yourself and the work your department does on coral reef issues?
Yes, hi, I'm glad to be able to finally do my introduction. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Kelly. Most of my research is in water quality, so I definitely would be approaching coral research from the water quality aspect of it. With our coastal department, I will also be working with Jessica Garland, who probably some of you know, and a lot of what we are doing now currently, we are looking into doing more of a restoration aspect as we're in the northern part of it, of the reef tract itself. So we're hoping to be able to do some actual restoration of the reef out here on our end of it. So we've been kind of looking into which specific corals are here so that we can be able to put back what should be there as we do some of our coastal restoration. So it's a whole connected holistic aspect where we look at water quality inland coming out to the coral reefs itself, and then all the land use issues that there might be, and then what we can do to restore the coastal area specifically considering the reefs and the species that live there.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth, and glad we got you on board and free and clear of the technical issues.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure. All right. Seeing no hands raised, we're going to move on. And I will talk a little bit about what we're thinking of for the rest of the year here in the meeting timeline. Next slide. So for the first year, and to try to help members who are serving double duty on the working group and science coordination group, we were looking to align the team's meetings with those quarterly meetings of the working group and science coordination group. So here you can see kind of the rough schedule that we're proposing, and these are built around the dates that the working group and science coordination group are scheduled to meet this year. One of the things that we'll do not long after this meeting concludes is Alan and I will work on sending around a doodle poll to try to gauge which of each of these dates work better for a majority of folks. And we'll try to abide by that as much as possible and try to get those fixed dates out to you all as soon as possible for your planning purposes. At each of the meetings, we're going to aim to do some learning through targeted presentations, hopefully hold some very robust discussions, make decisions necessary towards making progress in accomplishing the team's goals. And we'll also task out some assignments to aid in executing on those deliverables that were mentioned before that'll happen in between meetings. My rough vision for how the year can go includes focusing our March meeting around sort of more general interest around Everglades restoration, perhaps doing an overall status of the reef system condition, and also assessing current water quality monitoring programs in place across the system. So we have a good sense of what we're doing out on the reef from a monitoring perspective right now. In June, my preference is that we'd focus on identifying monitoring gaps and future needs to support the development of that first deliverable, the Regional Water Quality Monitoring Framework. In September, we could continue our work in the development of that monitoring framework, but I'd also like to then look to explore the history of intergovernmental coordination in this space, introduce our members to recover and also the use of ecological indicators in Everglades restoration. And at the end of the year, in that late November, early December timeframe, the goal would hopefully be to have a regional monitoring framework kind of finalized up for review and approval, begin to explore a standardized process for the team to initiate and develop nominations for ecological indicators to the science coordination group, to consider how to provide feedback to the working group on that SERP project development and design component, and also those potential impacts of upstream projects on reef resources. And so that's sort of how I picture a first year sort of playing out. A lot will depend on how we're able to progress. But I think that will lend us a full plate to work with and also demonstrate some significant progress at the end of this year as well. Does anybody have any comments or questions about that?
Marcia, if you could put the schedule back up real quickly. Thank you so much. While we're waiting for some hands to come up about the context that you've laid out, Wes, I just wanted to mention and clarify on the meeting timelines. When we say March 14th or 15th, that is a 2-day meeting of the working group and science coordination group. So within the 2-day agenda, we will find a 3-hour window or so to have as our own. That would be held at the main campus of the South Florida Water Management District in West Palm Beach, but acknowledging we have members who are in a variety of places. It will be a hybrid meeting, and so we'll also offer some Zoom access for those of you who are not able to attend in person. So that stands for the March and September meetings. For the June or the late November, early December meetings, those we'd be looking to hold on the USGS campus in Davie, Florida. And that would be either the day before or the day after the working group meeting that's associated with those dates. We would have it in a smaller room, but again, having it available as a hybrid meeting. Thank you, Wes.
No, thank you for that important context, Alan. And yeah, I mean, ideally, as many folks can get there in person as possible, the better for the direct interactions. But obviously, you know, we want to be able to provide folks with the ability to be flexible in their day-to-day responsibilities for their agencies as well. And again, because we are around the country, it seems. Sarah, I see you have your hand raised. Please, by all means.
Thank you, Wes. I think it may have just been answered, but I want to clarify and confirm that I heard that these would be half-day sessions. And okay, I'm nodding. Great, thank you. And then when you're looking at those dates, are you going to be inquiring as to which half of those days, in addition to the 14th or the 15th, for example, afternoon is better versus morning? Perfect. That's very helpful. Thank you. And I appreciate all the thought that you have obviously put into the choreography of subjects that we're going to tackle. That sounds really fantastic. Thank you for that.
My pleasure. And we'll get something up in writing for the next meeting to sort of give everybody a rough outline. And that's what it would be, because really the team is going to guide itself through this process, but something to shoot for. And yes, absolutely, ma'am. Morning versus afternoon, we'll kind of segregate that out. Potentially even there may be room to do late afternoon or early evening on the dates where we have two working group and science coordination group days together. But the goal would be to try to keep these meetings as tight as possible, you know, trying to limit it to 3 hours at most. Because I know everybody's got a lot going on. So the other thing that I'll just raise about the importance of coinciding these with the working group and science coordination group meetings as well is to try to also help make it possible for members of the team to find reason to participate and watch in those working group and science coordination group meetings. So you get an even better, broader context of where the team fits in the overall Everglades restoration schema too. All right, seeing no other hands raised, we can move on to the, I guess we're gonna look at the vice chair nomination. Alan, did you wanna lead us off here?
Sure. As Adam had mentioned earlier, we had a process where the team was established in September, and then we were able to nominate and formally have Wes serve as chair of this team through the working group. However, for the vice chair, we were looking for nominations from this team's membership that will then go to the working group for approval. So we're looking to have some discussion. The way that the charter was laid out, we're looking for a federal member that also helps to counterbalance, because Wes is a state member. We would like to have the vice chair be a federal member, just to have a good balance and of the members here. So that's just a little bit of background for that. And once we have a decision here within the team, as I said, that will be then taken to the working group at their next meeting to have it approved by them.
Great, thank you, Alan. So what I'd like to do, I think, amongst our members is actually ask the federal voting members if there's been any sort of discussion or decision reached on who would like to be nominated, or if somebody would like to nominate someone at this point, we can open up the floor for that.
And since we just went over the charter today, it may take everyone a moment to kind of get up to speed with what we're expecting with the role of the vice chair.
Please don't feel shy, federal members, if you'd like to express that opinion. We have a hand raised from Gil.
Yeah, I don't mean to get in front of the federal members if they have a comment, but not seeing anything from them, I would like to nominate Eric Stabenow as vice chair. Eric is a member of the Science Coordination Group. He's with the National Park Service. He's also a member of our executive coordination team for the stony coral tissue loss disease work, and I think would do an excellent job as vice chair.
Thanks, Gil. Adam here real quick. Yeah, don't be bashful, right, about self-nominating of an interest. Somebody has a personal interest to, serve in this role, to work with Wes and the OERI to help, provide some direction and focus on this effort here. But thanks again, Gil, for that, and so forth. Just wanted to point that out. All right. Thank you.
And I will say, just really briefly as well, when this charter was initially coming up for consideration, I believe there were a couple intergovernmental calls related to stony coral tissue loss disease, and I did state on that call that I thought that the federal members deserved to choose their own person to put forward before all of the voting members. And so I appreciate Gil's nomination. I'm going to defer to the federal team members to figure out what it is that they would like as well. And if that is Eric, that's great. Just let us know. Eric, I think you had your mic off for a second.
Yeah, I did. I'm not opposed to that nomination or taking on that responsibility. I've been pleased to be a part of that stony coral tissue loss disease, and I think have been an active participant in the process of helping us get to this point, as it were, anyways. So I think it feels appropriate, but I wasn't going to put my hand up for myself right away. Just as you can understand, if others want me to do this, I am public servants and glad to be here.
Did any other voting members and federal voting members have any thoughts?
I think technically we're supposed to have a second and then hold discussion as far as the good old Robert's rules.
Thank you,
process. Yes.
Any members with a second?
I'm a state member, but I'd happily second.
Well, and I have to admit, this is Wade Lehman, EPA. I'm a little confused because Robert's rules usually apply to a standing issue, not just a nomination. If there are multiple nominations, then a decision for certain. That aside, I'm fairly new to this group. I'm a part of many other groups, so I don't know all the players all that well. And I would just ask that if we want to do this the right way, maybe a couple sentences or a paragraph from each, and we can see those by email so we can have a more informed discussion, or at least more informed decision, would be great. And I'm sorry for that, because I know that EPA has had other members attached to the other groups, but being new to this, I just wanted to become familiar with people.
Nope, I appreciate that, Wade. We would have the ability to conduct this vote electronically via email. If folks would like a little bit more time to sort of ascertain not just their willingness to do this, but also who the choice should be from the federal family.
Okay, so it sounds like you would, I see Gil's hand is raised again. It sounds like you might like to take more nominations after we provide everyone with some background, whoever would be nominated or self-nominated, and then get that little blurb as Wade suggested, and have this process pan out through email.
I think that sounds like a good process. We'll note that Eric has been nominated. And so
And be open for other nominations as
Eric
well.
on the list for
Okay,
that.
perfect.
And then we'll look to move that over the before the next meeting as well, so that hopefully we can get that in front of the working group and science coordination group for concurrence.
March.
Yes.
Perfect.
Gil?
Yep.
So procedurally, we have a nomination and a second, but I certainly understand if the federal members want to initiate their own nomination. However, they seem to have been given that opportunity at this meeting, and I didn't hear anything. So that's why I made a nomination. If that is the federal members' desire, I'd be willing to withdraw my nomination, but I think it's important to get this vice chair in place sooner rather than later. So if in fact I withdraw, I'd like that to be resolved as quickly as possible. So I would offer that up.
Wait.
So I don't think there's any problem with leaving a nomination standing or not making a final decision on it. That would be my proposal. So as Wes, that you just said, basically, I would be in favor of taking that action, but time limiting it, let's say within the next 2 weeks. That way we don't come up against the March meeting deadline.
Okay. How about we look to collect the nominations and statements within the next week, with the goal of having the vote take place closing the vote no later than a week after that.
Clarification, Wes, if I may?
Yes, please.
By vote, I assume we mean a vote of the entire group. And do we have to convene formally to take that vote, or can that be done by email?
I'm informed by Adam that that is a vote that can take place via email, and it would be a vote of the voting members alone. So the 10 voting members.
So technically, I think Wes, right now, we would be tabling the motion right now and then moving out to providing the necessary information as requested, and then moving back to taking nominations and working through that process.
Yep. So do I have a second on the motion to table it per the directives we've sort of laid out here?
Yeah, I would second that.
Okay. And all thank you, Wade. And all opposed voting team members, would you please raise your hand now if you oppose the tabling of the motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll assume unanimous consent for that action. Thank you. And thank you, Eric, for your willingness to serve. We look forward to getting that blurb and any other federal voting members who might look to offer themselves up for that purpose.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Okay, with that, we are at the end of our time here. I'm going to, before we head into public comments, we're going to ask one more time if any task force, working group, or science coordination group member currently on the call would like to make any comments. Please raise your hand, and Alan will recognize you.
I see a hand, but it's from a member of the public at this moment. If there are any working group or SCG members, if you'd like to make any comments before we open up the public comment period, please go ahead and raise your hands. All right, seeing none right now from the membership.
Great, thank you, Alan. All right, well, we are going to start the public comment period. We'd encourage anyone other than the early bird out there, go ahead and raise your hand. Use that raise your hand feature now. Please keep your remarks to between 2 to 3 minutes. We'll have a countdown clock working. We've got a little feedback there. So Sandy, if you wouldn't mind facilitating the public comment period.
Sure. Right now we have Kelly Ralston.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Excellent. Well, Wes, I'll try not to take offense at being the early bird, but I was definitely enthusiastic about this meeting today and excited to hear the conversation. For the record, I'm Kelly Ralston, Vice President for Conservation and Public Policy with the Bonefish and Tarpon Trust. We are a science-based organization focused on conservation of bonefish, tarpon, and permit, but also the fisheries and the habitats that support them. We recognize that habitat and water quality are key to abundant and sustainable fisheries, and hence our intense interest in this group and the coordination of coral issues and restoration with Everglades Restoration. And so we commend the formation of this team, really excited for this meeting, and appreciate local, state, and federal efforts and participation on coral issues. I'll say I don't think the timing could be any better for this group's inaugural meeting with the governor's recent commitment to additional coral funding and restoration efforts at the state level, as well as bipartisan reauthorization of the federal coral reef conservation program during the last Congress. Communication and coordination are key to Everglades restoration from Central Florida all the way to the Dry Tortugas. And as I said before, corals are just such an important part of that conversation. We're also really supportive of the timeline and deliverables laid out during this meeting, and are excited to support you as you move forward, and appreciate the Florida Office of Resilience, OERI, as well as separate task force and working groups for the formation and facilitation of this team. So thank you so much.
If anyone else wishes to provide public comment, please go ahead and raise your hands now. Wait, Wes, I don't see any other hands.
Well, great. I think we've made very efficient use of everybody's time. So I hope everybody can appreciate that. And like I said, we will work to conduct these meetings in this manner as much as possible. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody for joining today for this kickoff meeting of Florida's Coral Reef Coordination Team. Again, special thanks to Alan Childress, to Adam and the OERI team for helping make this as smooth as possible. And we will do a couple things here in the runoff. As decided in this meeting, we will work on soliciting those nominations for the federal vice chair member of the team and conducting that vote within the next 2 weeks, as well as line up those doodle polls for getting the calendar set for the rest of the year. So thank you all very much for your help, and looking forward to a great and productive year.
Wes, you're ending on such a positive note, but you had mentioned assigning homework to me. Did you know?
Yes. Look at that. I have a whole thing here. Thank you, Alan.
Indeed.
So again, thank you. I should mention also our next meeting will be held at the South Florida Water Management District in West Palm Beach, with a Zoom option for those who can't make it in person. Again, in March, we'll really look to focus on current water quality monitoring efforts. I think you can expect a few presentations to get us all on the same fact basis, operating the South Florida ecosystem. I'm also going to ask DEP to share the results of an effort I believe they conducted in the recent past to assess monitoring efforts across the region. And we can use that as a basis for validation with respect to each of our individual agencies' ongoing monitoring efforts. As Alan mentioned, and thank you again for reminding me so we didn't have to email it out, we're going to ask each agency to produce a written synopsis of their current monitoring programs or efforts that they conduct or that they support along the coastal system and the reef tract itself. And I will commit to working with Alan to get a general template out later today or tomorrow for everybody's use in developing those. And I think we will ask that everybody get those to Alan by about March 1st. So she has time to collate and analyze them ahead of the next meeting. And again, those don't have to be significant treatises. You know, we can really focus on the nuts and bolts of what your programs are providing from a monitoring standpoint. Anybody have any questions or comments about the assignments? CJ.
Yeah, just real quick. I assume that we're talking specifically coral monitoring efforts, reef fish. That's kind of along the lines of the question I'm asking there.
So, so the charter says water quality monitoring. I'm certainly open to getting as much, you know, there's obviously biological monitoring, like you mentioned. There's other forms of monitoring possible. And if that is the thrust of what you all can provide, I think we're happy to receive it in written form and work from there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Wes, real quick, just to be very clear here to the voting members and non-voting members, the OERI here is to support your success, right? Any questions, anything we can help with, please feel free to reach out to us. Wes, the team may decide to start populating the landing page for the Florida Coral Reef Coordination Team with certain meetings to cross-pollinate with what's going on with regards to water quality in your agencies and posting links to other meetings going on to continue this integration of information and sharing. So anyhow, just wanted to make sure you all are comfortable and aware that you can reach out to us at any time.
Thank you, Adam. And again, Alan, thank you for saving myself from myself and my desire to conduct really expedited and efficient meetings. So, all right, with that, we'll move to close this one out. Thank you again.
Thank you, Wes. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And again, reach out. We are here to help you and make this team a very successful endeavor. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
You all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.